So I did electrical engineering at Virginia Tech, and I did okay, but I really wasn't happy. And I graduated, I became a defense contractor in the Northern Virginia area, and was really unhappy at that point. But as I sat at my desk, I would listen to public radio, and I would listen to the Diane Rehm show, and back then it was not national, it was just a local program. And I said, that's what I really want to do. I want to sit and talk to interesting people. That's like so cool. And so a friend of mine says, you would just do it, just try, maybe you can volunteer, whatever. I said, okay. So I called WAMU and I said, hi, I'd like to volunteer. And they said, okay, you can come in and answer phones. And I was like, yeah. Or, somebody like Diane Rehm maybe needs some volunteer help, like doing research or something. So she said, hold on, let me ask. She comes back and she says, Diane says send a resume and cover letter. So she's like, okay. So I was just, maybe a year or two out of engineering school, and my resume said engineering, so I tried to change it around. I sent it to her, nothing happened. And then I found out that Diane was speaking at a venue locally, and I went and I jumped her after her speech, and I said, did you get my resume? Do you have any writing experience? And I was like, yeah. But she said, look, I don't know. And I was like, no, I know I can do this. Even though I didn't know what this was, I knew I could do it. And she said, I don't have any space for you in my office. And I said, no, that's fine. And I'm like thinking, office? I've got a job. How am I going to go to your office? She said, okay, come by and we'll give you a chance. So I went, I left my defense contracting job in the middle of the day and ran down to WAMU not knowing what to expect. And her producer handed me a book and a couple of scripts and said, read the book, write a script, and this is when it's due. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. So I poured over it, and I went through and I wrote the questions and I rearranged them and I wrote all the, explanation. Why did, what are we expecting this person to say for this question? And I went and I gave it back. And she said, well, Diane's going to have to take a look at this. And I was like, yeah, of course. So I went back to my office, they called me on my office, and the producer says to me, Diane loved your script. Can you come and get another one? So that was back in 1993, and that started about 3 years of me going in, getting a book, reading the book, writing the script for her, and that includes the introduction that she reads on the air, all the questions that she asks, and again, explaining so that she knows why am I asking this question, what's the person going to say from this question at the bottom. And Diane had told me, she said, Mimi, you're really good, but the women that work for me, they make less than you. And they were twice my age at that time. And I was like thinking, and she's like, only a very few people make it at the top. And so I was like, come on, I can't leave my big engineering salary, and I've started to move up and do more interesting things, and so this will just be a hobby for me, and let's just forget about it. And no, it was 2001. The NASDAQ bubble burst, and people started getting laid off. So I survived the first big wave of layoffs at my company, but didn't survive the second. And I was pregnant with my first daughter at the time, and I was unemployable. So I was like, you know what, I have nothing to lose at this point. I don't have a salary, I can't get a job. So I went down to public access, I took the classes, and was like, I want to start a radio program. Why? Just because that's what I know. And I modeled it on the Diane Rehm show. So I started booking authors that were coming through DC, and started to learn how to do the whole on-air part. I was really good at reading and writing the script, but the whole on-air part. So I started learning that, and slowly, the guests started saying, wow, that was a really great interview, and I was more encouraged. I started going out to other stations to carry the program, small, low power stations, college radio stations, all non-commercial though. And then, and I kept doing this. you're probably asking, how am I paying for this? I'm not making any money on this. This is completely, volunteer on the side, but I was working at it all the time while raising my young children. And XM Radio came to Washington, D.C., and I thought, well, let me just give it a try. So I called and, got put off, and called, got put off, and yeah, you should talk to that guy. Well, to make a long story short, it took 2.5 years of calling and trying and sending them demos, when finally the right guy listened to it at the right time and called me back and said, I love this program, I'm going to put it on the air. So at that point, this was now 2005, the show went national on XM Radio. So here's the deal. We take your program and you have sponsorship spots that you can air on our air. Now, this is national, this is huge. And I'm like, oh, the sky's going to open up and the funding's going to start raining down on me. Because, come on, it's national. It's a national program, millions of subscribers. So that didn't happen. And it was a lot harder than it seemed. But, at that time, I was able to get so many interesting guests, the amount of people that, I was constantly turning people down for people trying to get on the program, publicists contacting me, and things like that. So I kept going at that point. I would have some expenses that I would be able to sell some sponsorships for some programs, and that covered expenses, but nowhere near enough to cover salaries. I recruited volunteers to help whenever I could, and it was interesting because I was so successful programming-wise, programs that I was able to put out, the people emailing me, listeners emailing me, telling me we love your program, but not getting paid. So it was extremely frustrating at that time. In 2012, there was a redesign in our studio, and that allowed me to bring in video cameras. So I started bringing in 3 cameras into the radio studio, because I thought, I get such great people coming in here. Really, sometimes some big names, and I should try to get it on TV as well. So I started doing that, and I've been doing that. That led me to, I had Tavis Smiley on. I don't know if you know, he is also public radio, public TV personality. And I said, Tavis, what do you think I should do? And he said, call WHUT. Tell them you're a friend of mine, and see what they say. So I did, and we're now at this point, I'm going to be piloting a program. We're going to be taping the pilot April 2nd. And it's going to be a program focused solely on international topics. And just because we feel like there's a need out there in the public media sphere for really understanding international topics, given all that's going on around the world, let's just say, is if you're interested in the media kind of business, think about a niche that you are specifically good at, and that might be a need. So if you try to do a very broad show like I did, it's going to be very hard to define it for people, which is, I think, it's going to be a lot easier if you focus a little bit more on a niche, especially starting out. The other thing is, I just wanted to leave you with kind of the, why do I continue to do this when obviously it's not paying off? And I told Bob when he was like, you should come speak, and I was like, no, but I'm not a successful entrepreneur. You really don't want me to tell people. And he says, it's how you define success. So how I'm defining success is the amazing experiences that I've had with each of these guests. At this point, I'm about 500 interviews over the course of the past 12 plus years. And I am such a different person now because of each of those interviews. I get to learn things that I would have never learned and talk to people that I would have never met otherwise. Adele was one of my guests, and that's really why I'm here. Adele wrote a book about physical therapy at Walter Reed.